My journey with meso began back in about 2000 when I wasn't feeling well, and I was misdiagnosed and treated for irritable bowel syndrome for about 2.5 years. And then one day I realized that I filled up with ascites, which is fluid, and I had a very thick abdomen, which was unusual, and my clothes weren't fitting. So I went to the doctor, and they sent me for a CAT scan, and the CAT scan showed a little bit of fluid. And the doctor said, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll keep an eye on you, that's it." And I just still didn't feel good until finally my primary doctor sent me to another doctor. And he said, "I think you need to have an exploratory." And that's when we decided, okay, we'd go for some surgery and find out what was wrong. And the fluid came out negative, but when the surgeon went in, he saw cells he had never seen before except in a college textbook, and it turned out to be the mesothelioma cells. Before I was diagnosed, I was a school librarian in a job that I loved. I was a multitasker, I was a mom, I was a horseback rider, I played tennis and racquetball, and started at 6 o'clock in the morning, stopped at midnight. I did the super mom bit. I loved going places and doing things and shopping, and just, I was a literacy volunteer, and I was on the literacy volunteer board. And then I got sick, and my life changed, and I had to quit my job, and I had to start depending on other people to take care of me. And I couldn't get my brain to function normally anymore. I can't multitask. I ended up with leukemia from the treatments. I ended up with a hip replacement from the treatments. So I have a very limited life now, and it's affected me mentally, because not only can't I remember many things, or I get confused, or I can't put my words together correctly. But I have to watch my family watch me do this, which is very difficult to do. I was a very free-thinking, self-reliant person, and I can't say that I'm that anymore. I was originally diagnosed in New Jersey by just a general surgeon who had said to me, after we got done with the shock that we were in about what mesothelioma was, and that it was a cancer, and that I had it, he said he had never seen it except in a college textbook. And this surgeon was a very old doctor. That's how rare this disease is. So at that point, we didn't know what to do, and we started making appointments in New Jersey, but I got a phone call from the surgeon saying that his new partner had worked as under a residency of John Chabot in New York, who is a surgeon there. And I made an appointment with Dr. Chabot. And when we walked in, he said, "Well, so what did the oncologist say?" And I said, "I haven't seen an oncologist. I was told to see you." Well, he called Robert Taub up, and Dr. Taub came in. It was his day off. He came right into the hospital that day, and they conferred about me. And that's when they told me what they could about mesothelioma and what kind of treatments they have. At the time, I went through a major operation called a debulking, where they opened up my whole abdomen and took out as much tumor as they could. The tumor was spread throughout my whole abdomen, and they took the omentum out, which is what holds your organs all in one place in your abdomen. Mesothelioma tends to survive in the lining of the organs. And then I started on different rounds of chemos. Every week it was a different 1 or 2 types of chemo, and at the time, because it was a clinical trial, I had to go into the hospital for a few days. And then I would end up with transfusions as needed and shots to bring my blood counts up because the chemotherapy it's devastating. It's not fun to do. It's very aggressive on the body. And after I went through all those weeks and weeks and months of chemotherapy, I went for a second debulking and a hot chemo interperitoneal wash, where they actually heat your body up, and after they open you up, they take out the tumor and they swish hot mitomycin chemotherapy throughout your body. And I really believe that is one of the great factors in peritoneal mesothelioma survivors now. Those that can have that done, I think it kills a lot of the cancer cells that are residual. And then after a couple months, I went into radiation, which through the clinical trial, I believe they found really does not work very well on peritoneal mesothelioma patients. So that was my treatment and how I was diagnosed. And then because of some of the treatments, I ended up with a rare leukemia diagnosed a few years later. Because when you have cancer and you have treatment, sometimes the body just doesn't come back as normal. You end up with other immune compromised incidences or other factors that either the chemo or the disease has affected. I'm one of the lucky ones. I have almost everything that could be affected. I was exposed to asbestos by washing my husband's clothes. He was a refinery worker, and he would come home filthy, covered in asbestos, especially during the beginning years of his job. And even in the later years, they used asbestos in whatever it is he did. Bags of it, he would put his hands in it. So he was always around asbestos, and I would take his clothes and shake them out and throw them down the basement and then go into the pile of clothes and bring them to the washing machine and wash them. Or sometimes he would just come to bed without taking a shower. He'd be so tired because he worked so many double shifts or time-and-a-half shifts that he would just go to bed right next to me. Could have been in his hair, but it was through his work. And secondhand exposure is one of the major ways that people are exposed to asbestos. When I first learned that my mesothelioma was caused by asbestos, I was pretty angry. I felt that the corporation my husband worked for, Exxon, they had known years and years and years ahead of time, back in the, I think the late 30s, what asbestos did to people. And they never really let on to the workers. So there's a lot of anger. And I felt for all the other workers who still worked there or who worked when I did, and their cause of death was listed as cancer, and no one ever bothered to find out what kind of cancer had killed them. I think there needs to be some justice made, some accountability on the part of these corporations that knew, even after the government banned asbestos and then rescinded the ban. These corporations needed to be accountable to their workers and their families. It's not always just about them and the money they make. Well, my doctor, the surgeon that I had, he's the one that told my husband about the diagnosis, and he wanted to make sure it was confirmed through the pathology, which it was immediately. And then we had to tell my daughter, and that's the only child we have. So we told her. It was pretty devastating to find out you have a cancer that the doctors say you have 6 months to live with. So it was it's a hard thing just to deal with. It was especially hard for my husband because he was my caregiver. I think the key to surviving has been looking for the right information and finding the best doctors I could, and going, for me, for the most radical treatment and the most aggressive treatment. Because mesothelioma is known to kill its patients. And I went actually into a clinical trial with the thought that I wasn't going to make it, but at least I could help others try to find treatment for this horrible cancer. I felt that I needed to go to doctors who would be sympathetic and who could understand what they were treating. In New Jersey, the treatment wasn't very good, and the doctors here only gave me 6 months to live. So when I went to New York and I made an appointment with Dr. Chabot, the surgeon, and Dr. Taub, the oncologist, they gave me some hope that I would have a few more years to live with mesothelioma. The advice I would give to someone who was recently diagnosed is, number one, to get in touch with the Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation, or we used to call it MARF. It's called the Meso Foundation. They have a wonderful nurse practitioner named Mary Hesdorfer who can guide the newly diagnosed patient and the family to the doctors that are available and the treatments that are available. Each meso patient and case is totally different from another one. And it's a scary world out there because there are so few meso specialists. One of the things you have to do when you have this cancer is you have to see a specialist in this disease. You may have to travel. You may have to even get 1 or 2 opinions because they might not all be the same type of treatment. They might not agree on the same type of agenda, but you have to go to a specialist, and that is one of the most important things to do for yourself and for your treatment to try to stay alive. I decided to file a lawsuit because I felt that, first, this needed to come out, that Exxon and other corporations had neglected the people that worked for them, the people that give the sweat and the bloods and the work ethics and give all those years. It's more than just a paycheck. It should be a company that takes care of their employees. And I also felt that without that, when I died, because John had to retire early, he wasn't going to be able to support himself with Social Security or pension or anything else. And if I have to go into clinical trials, insurance doesn't pay for that sort of thing. If I have to go into a nursing home because he can't take care of me anymore, insurance doesn't pay for that. So there had to be some other alternative, or we were just going to be in really dire straits when I get to the point that I'm dying. I was happy with the results of my lawsuit with Levy Konigsberg. My lawyer, Moshe Maiman, was excellent and very compassionate towards me and my husband and the circumstances that we had dealing with the different court divisions between the Superior Court, the Appeals Court, and the New Jersey Supreme Court. And at each and every court level, he applied an expert attorney attitude, which was that we as his clients came first. And with the final verdict of winning $7.5 million, which is still a shock, I could not ask a law firm to do better than that against a company like Exxon.